Hey there guys, and welcome back to New Zealand, and I've got to say it's great to be back. As you guys know, I took a break from the city for a while because I was falling a little bit flat in the inspiration category, but now I'm back, and I'm feeling inspired, and I've got a special guest, not in this episode admittedly, but I lay down some basic infrastructure in this episode that allows me to get towards where that build is, and that will be in the next episode. And I've decided I'm going to give you guys just a little wee clue as to who it might be. He is one of the best detailers in this game that I have ever seen and builds some of the most eye-catching designs, like I said, that I've ever seen. So there you go guys, that's all I'm giving away. So chuck your best guess down in the comments. Did I mention it was good to be back? It is great to be back. And like I mentioned earlier, this episode is more or less about infrastructure. We build a cool bridge that goes over to what would be Jack's Point in real life. We also put in a pretty cool looking dumbbell interchange and bring a brand new highway in from the north. And we also add in a couple of interesting neighbourhoods. One is what we call state housing, or a low income area here in New Zealand, and we'll go into that a bit more later on. And the rest of it is just detailing the coast along up to the new bridge that we put in. And you'll also see me finish off the relocation of the Pukekura Park Bowl of Brooklands in this episode as well. It finally sits in its final resting place now, and I do a little bit of detailing around that as well. So the first thing you see me do in this episode is re-terraform this hill here, and I've taken out a couple of the little wee rivers that I didn't really think made that much sense right from the start. So what I've done is I've given myself a little bit more room down on the flat for building the city and for Pukekura Park to fit in, and the rest of this just gets detailed with a few trees going up the valleys and stuff like that. And there's also a small plateau at the top here that I brown off and try and make it look like it gets snow if it's really cold, or they get a good dump. A sub-alpine environment, I guess you would call it. And we also chuck a little wee lake up there as well. So I'm really pleased with how this little part has come out with this new terraforming, and it allowed me to get rid of a whole heap of really thick foliage as well, so it's helped my FPS along the way, and ultimately I think it looks much more realistic like this as well. So I'm going to mention as well guys that while I was on my little break from New Zealand, I also worked a little bit on my side project, and some of you might have seen me post a photo from that. Well, I have turned that into an episode of what I don't really know at this stage. It may be a new series, it may be a one-off thing, I'm not sure, but there you go guys, I am working on another series, and we may see that within maybe the next month, I'm not sure. I don't really know. Like I said, it's a side thing. I haven't really planned anything major for the project, although now I'm flirting with the idea of turning it into a series. I am taking it a little more seriously, and as well as the style of architecture involved in that particular series, it's also about the most opposite you could possibly get from building in New Zealand, which makes both the projects really fresh and feel new, brand new to work on every time. And of course there was a little bit of work I did on the floating city as well, if you guys seen that. But the floating cities are great for one episode, but that style of building gets very tiresome very quickly. I could never do a whole series like that. I don't think it would be interesting enough to hold your attention anyway, but they make a fantastic little escape for one episode, and hopefully that was interesting if you watched it. Anyway, blah 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 blah, you can see me here, we're detailing the coast now, and pretty simple here really. I wish I could change the sand to black, because New Zealand has a lot of black sand beaches, and I really wanted to do that here, and I could have done it with decals, but they fade out at a certain distance and I don't like that, so I've just stuck with the sand texture that I've been using. And once I've done that small part of the coast there, I can start putting some more roads in, and once all these roads here are in place and whatnot, I carry on detailing that coast up further. But the first road we put in here is basically just to give access to this car park, and there's a walkway off the end of the car park that goes around the peninsula, and that's basically access for that. Now that I've finished that and the city has crept closer to this intersection here, I can start building it, and what I'm doing is I'm bringing it around here to what will eventually be a bridge that goes across the peninsula, or across the bay rather. And I'm also installing a what they call a dumbbell intersection here as well, which gives access into the city. And I haven't had this highway hooked up for the entirety of the series so far because it was bringing a whole lot of unnecessary traffic into the city and just gridlocking everything. Mind you, that was very, very early in the series, and I'm hoping now, because the city's growing in the opposite direction, that this shouldn't change things too much at the moment. And what I'm doing here is I'm directing some of the traffic to go directly over the bridge, and then you have to go through the dumbbell intersection to enter the city, and it's the same coming back across the bridge as well. So I leave these roads at the edge of the lake, and we come back to building that bridge a bit later, and now I can start putting some buildings down. And I start with a whole lot of hotels and stuff around the coast here, and these are just high density residential buildings mostly. But from this coastline here, there's a fantastic view across to Jack's Point, which is on the other side of the lake, and there's a little bit of inspiration here from Queenstown, the original, the OG of cities. And if you're lucky enough to have been to Queenstown, you'll know there is hotels everywhere. So unfortunately, the buildings that you see me put down here, I had to change because I lost this part of the save and I had trouble getting back in, and I had to revert to an older save, so I had to redo these, but they're very similar. That was such a scary moment because I thought I had lost the New Zealand save. There was about 3 or 4 days there where I just could not get the save to work, and when I did, I loaded in. The roads and the terrain were all over the place. Something was obviously conflicting, but with some help from the good old Twitter community, we found out the problem, we made it work in the end, and here we are. So a quick shout out to all those good bastards on Twitter that helped me out, Crimson in particular. Cheers, bro. So in terms of the roading and stuff in this area, even though obviously there's not much traffic around at the moment, this is going to be a very, very busy intersection and area later on when I expand across and the city grows. So I'm doing my best here to make all of these intersections really bulletproof and sort of cater for everybody that wants to go in any particular direction. I'm also contemplating extending the railway across next to the bridge over to the other side where Jack's Point is. Let me know what you guys think about doing that. I'm not 100% on that yet, although having some sort of public transportation running over there is going to ease any car congestion on or around the bridge. Or do we make a tunnel? You know, I'm not too sure. I am leaning towards having it run over there for sure, but I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on that. Anyway, now that we've pushed the city out a little bit further, we can come back to finishing off this coast, and here it doesn't change too much from what we did earlier, except I put this wooden pier in that you can walk along. I think this would be really nice taking a stroll along here at sunset. It would be really neat next to the water, your $5 bakery pie in hand, just living your best life. Maybe you're strolling along here with the missus with some fish and chips or something, you know, just whatever the buzz is, eh? But again, I've kept this pretty simple along here. There's not too much to it. I haven't tried to overdo it. There's a bit of rawness and a bit of grittiness to it, but this goes for all of the coasts that I've built so far. Some bits are really rugged and some bits are really beautiful, and there's even some in-betweens, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I think that's probably the most realistic way that coastlines are, and that stark contrast between areas along the coast really helps particular areas stand out from one another. And here's where you see me building exactly one of those rugged areas I was just talking about, and I use Grey Flame's awesome mossy rocks here to create this little sort of peninsula that sort of meets a cliff, and the colour of my grass is almost exactly the colour of the grass on these rocks, which is a happy coincidence, but I end up putting a lot of trees out on this peninsula and sort of making it look natural. And as tempting as it was to make this really beautiful along here in front of these hotels, yeah, I thought stuff it, I'm just going to make it look really rugged. So now I move on to building this area here, which is the low income housing, or state housing as it's called here in New Zealand. And state housing has a long history here in New Zealand, starting in 1905 when Richard Snedden was our Prime Minister. But these houses here are based on the boom after World War II. New Zealand built 10,000 houses a year with sometimes entire neighbourhoods mapped out with where shops were going to be before they'd even put a spade in the dirt. In fact, the national government at the time let state tenants buy their homes. They offered state loans and subsidised the building industry, all in an effort to try and bring the house price down at the time. And if we move forward a few years, during the 1990s, the national government sold state houses in 1990 but kept a reduced state housing building program. Only people on the welfare could rent a state home, so this forced a lot of low income people into those state homes. And this neighbourhood here that I'm building is based on exactly that. These are all sort of 1950s, 1960s builds. These particular ones here are in an Australian housing pack called the Boomer Pack, if you're interested. But if you're a Kiwi and you're looking at this neighbourhood, this should look fairly familiar. I was rapt with how this looked. These houses are absolutely perfect. The textures are great. They fit that New Zealand state house style perfectly. And as much as I wanted to make every part of New Zealand beautiful, I also wanted to make it realistic. And it does include these neighbourhoods. And these aren't neighbourhoods you really want to be around. Put it this way, if you drove a red coloured car through the wrong neighbourhood, you could seriously be in trouble. And as petty and silly as that may seem to the majority of us, that is life in some of these neighbourhoods in New Zealand. And aside from the buildings, I use a whole bunch of different props here to really try and capture that feeling, and I wouldn't want to be driving around this neighbourhood, so I'm really pleased with how this has come out. Right, now I can move on to the crowning glory of this episode, which is this bridge here that heads over to Jack's Point, and that is where I'm doing the collaboration with the builder that I spoke about earlier, and that is exactly why we need to get this bridge in as well. And I would have loved to have done some sort of really nice, beautiful, crazy design that maybe you'd see in a place like Dubai. But again, I've got to stick to those realistic properties that I've applied to the entire city. So I've decided to do this bridge like the Auckland Harbour Bridge. I think that makes a lot of sense. And with what's going on at the moment with the whole bike path debacle, whatever you want to call it, and for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, they have just had approval for a cycle lane to finally be built on a bridge that's over 60 years old at a cost that would make you fall over. So guess what? I'm going to include it in mine right from the start. That's right, all you ratepayers can thank me later. Mere Dirty H is all over it, mate. So in order to hook up the bridge to the infrastructure that I had created earlier, I've had to make this intersection, and it took a bit of jiggling around. I tried different paths and different lanes and all of that. But basically I've set it up so that the traffic coming over the bridge and into the main part of the city can either go into the dumbbell intersection or can carry on through and out of the city, and the traffic coming the opposite direction can just flow from one lane into two lanes over the bridge. And I top it off by chucking in some of these sweet PO signs, and these allow a text customization where you can put destinations on it, and it's just a cool little touch to these intersections. If you're interested, these signs here are from the UK road sign prop, but these are exactly the same as the New Zealand props. And now is the time to put in our $3 billion bike track. So I'm a pretty honest man, just so you guys know, it's only cost me a third of that to build it in City Skylines. So now I have 4 wives, 4 more cars, and about 27 properties. But you guys will get your bike path, so don't sweat it. Nah, I'm just playing. I would never do that to you guys, ever. So vote for me. Anyway, I've got to say, I don't work with these bike networks very much in City Skylines, and I haven't in the past much at all either. But if you look at this intersection, it's super dodgy if you're trying to get through this on a bike. Like if you're trying to get across that river on a bike, this is just, this isn't going to work. So that, and with what's happening with the Auckland Harbour Bridge, have sort of spurred me on to do what I'm doing here. and I modified a little bit from what you see here eventually, but it comes through both ends of the dumbbell intersection and flows over the river, and it's also got 2 other exits that exit out each side of the intersection, and I really hope to see this flooded with people on their bikes once we build this area out. There was a whole lot of other attempts at making this bridge that you won't see here. They didn't make the final cut. One in particular looked like a bloody transformer. It was terrible. But eventually I settled on this design here, which is really simple. The very middle part of the bridge is set up as a elevated bridge, and the rest of it is just set up as elevated. And this is more or less how the Auckland Harbour Bridge looks in real life. I was never too fussed on matching it like for like. I was quite happy just to take inspiration from it, and out of all of the crazy designs that I tried, Transformers included, this is by far the best looking and probably the most practical. And the next thing to do on the build was I used these NAR, which is the Northern American Rail System. I can't remember who it's by, but it's incredible. It may be Grey Flame actually. If not, I apologise. But they have these really cool iron pillars that can be used with PO here to achieve the look that I'm going for underneath the bridge. And here's a picture of the Auckland Harbour Bridge, just so you guys have some sort of reference as the look that I'm going for. And again, I'll stress I'm not going like for like, I'm just using this as inspiration. You'll also see me widen the pillars here as well a little bit, because I'm going to add in dedicated pedestrian paths and bicycle paths very shortly. The next thing you see me build is the base for the 2 pillars that are closest to where the ships are going to go through, or the very middle of the bridge. And I decided to make this on land because obviously it's much easier than trying to make it in the water. And I guess what I'm trying to do here is just make a very small platform at the bottom here that's a sort of a service area. There's going to be lights around the edge of the platform that help guide the ships in at night, and my assumption is there's going to be some person that's going to have to replace the bulbs every now and then, so this just gives access to maintenance on those lights. So aside from a prop door, a piece of concrete to act as the base, and a surface network so that the decals can show up, this is very basic. But seen as it's serving an actual purpose with the lights, I don't really feel the need to push this too far in terms of props. And the next thing to do is carry on putting the bike path over, and I run this up the side and over where I had extended the pillars out to be wider than the bridge. They were widened obviously to accommodate this path coming through. And I gotta say, I am super excited to see some cyclists going over this. It might take a little while until it's built out sufficiently, but yeah, I'm so excited to see people going over this bridge. And you'll also see me add in a pedestrian path on the opposite side of the bike path. I felt like this was appropriate. There is no decent access for pedestrians to walk over the bridge via the road paths whatsoever. But to be honest, I'm not too sure on the final look of these paths. I love the way the bridges come out, but these paths very much look like they've just been tacked on the side, even though I've extended the pillars out. So I may look to add something in future that just makes these look a little bit more appropriate. Whether that means running the paths underneath or directly above the roadway, or yeah, I don't know. I'm open to different ideas. If you guys have got an idea, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, I don't feel 100% with these, but they're okay for now, so I'm happy with them for now. Well guys, we are at the end. There's no more. That's it for this episode. I know I'm gutted too, but we got heaps done in that episode. If you've watched the whole thing, I'm so pleased. Thank you so much. I would really appreciate if you hit that thumbs up on the video, and if you really want to be a good bastard, you'll subscribe to me. And if you don't want to subscribe to me, hey, that's alright man, no one's perfect. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you on the next one, and take care of yourselves guys as always, and look after each other. See you later.